Cali grow.
My name is Katy Lira. I am in the combined bachelor's master's program. I'm currently working towards my bachelor's degree in sociology and my master's degree in public sociology. I also work as a research assistant here in the Cannabis Lab, and I am an office assistant in the Department of Sociology. For me, the CSL has been a really good way to connect with cannabis through the lens of race and ethnicity, specifically living here, in the Emerald Triangle. This is a really unique place to study cannabis and like the culture surrounding it. And for me, the thing that really interests me is like race and ethnicity within cannabis, and this has allowed me to really make those connections and get closer to that. Definitely one of the greatest opportunities, I would say, is the grant funding that I've received from the CSL and from Dan to be able to do my research, to be able to, one, travel and stay overnight in Mendocino and be able to travel to different farms and talk to different farmers. Not only that, but I've made a lot of really good connections through the CSL in terms of people that can help me with interviews in my research or just connections in general within the industry. I've also kind of just learned a lot about the Cannabis Studies major because I'm not in the major myself, but learning about it from the stewardship side has also been really interesting and does play a huge role in my own research, so it's important to understand. One of my biggest research interests has been racial inequality or just examining race and ethnicity and the role it plays within our social hierarchies. Like I mentioned before, cannabis, especially here, has a very specific culture and sort of social norms surrounding it. And it's very rich within the history of where we live. And I've found within my research that while it is there is a lot of well-documented research on the cannabis industry, not a lot of it dives really into the social side. It specifically in the roles and opportunities that are available for people of color and marginalized communities. One of the major things I've found, which I don't think will be surprising to anybody who knows anything about agriculture, is the employment of undocumented people on cannabis farms, specifically on bigger, more industrial farms. And that is something that we've seen increase with legalization because obviously with legalization comes corporatization. And so you have these big corporate entities moving in, kind of pushing out the smaller farmers who may or may not have more equitable practices, coming in and seeing that, you can make more money tapping into this new industry, and you can make even more money by underpaying the people who are doing the hard labor. And so that is one of the biggest roles I've seen. Of course, there are exceptions. Overall, I have also found that while in labor like trimming and harvesting, that sort of less desirable farm labor, you do see employment of people of color. But when you get to the higher positions, like farmers and even on the retail side, management within dispensaries and stuff like that, there's not a lot of opportunity for these marginalized communities just because of the way that the network of connections has been established. My first year as a transfer student here, I took a drugs and society class, and I wrote a paper there about the racialization of marijuana throughout history here in the United States, and I actually traced it back somewhat. A lot of the similar sentiments that were being used during the first wave of marijuana prohibition here in the United States, there was a lot of influence from Mexico itself, and the sort of rumors and stereotypes that were prevalent about weed there kind of crossed over, and it just so happened that this also coincided with the first, one of the first mega waves of Mexican immigration to the United States. And so what I found was there was kind of this association of weed with Mexican immigration. And that is actually when we saw the use of the term marijuana become more popularized here in the States, because that is literally the Spanish word for the cannabis plant. And so that really just sparked my interest in like cannabis in general and like the racial aspect behind it. And then with the help of my faculty, Mary and Dan kind of encouraged me to like keep like delving into this further and seeing where I could take this, and that kind of led me to here where I am now, examining like the contemporary aspect of it and how that falls in line with like the historical racialization of marijuana. I think there's a really unique way in the way relationships are formed within the industry. Having for so long been a culture that is like completely dependent on a plant that is like deemed not only illegal but like it's a Schedule 1, like up there with like heroin and meth, which is crazy. But just like that sort of like idea of outlaw culture and like small circles and very much like word of mouth reputation and the importance and significance of that. I think it's really cool to see how these like bonds form between people who may not like even have really anything else in common besides the love for this plant. And I think that's another thing that not necessarily surprised me, but has been really cool to see, is just like the passion people really have about this, about growing, and about farming and being within the culture. So, like I said, like race and ethnicity has been like a big interest of mine in terms of research for a while. And for a while, I kind of like struggled even figuring out like how to, like what avenue to explore that through. And I think it was really just like kind of like I talked about with like the faculty, like my advisor. She like saw the paper that I wrote for that one class, and she was like, well, you know, I noticed you have an interest in this. Like, what if I like tried to set up something in the cannabis lab? And I was like, oh, I don't really like, but outside of smoking weed, I don't really know anything about cannabis. She was like, well, it's okay. Like, you can learn. And then she sent the paper to Dan, and he was actually the one who was like, I think this is great. Like, I think there's so many different things we can do with this and that. And I think that's really like what pushed me to do it, was just like everybody was so encouraging and was like, yeah, like you can do so many things with this. So that's been the major thing, is just the support and encouragement from like faculty that really got me here. And I'm glad, because it's been really cool. It's being able to do this for my like research assistant hours has been like a lot more open and like my choice in what I want to research, as in comparison to some of my like classmates who I know who are doing research assistant hours with other professors and are like specifically doing like reading like papers or doing a specific type of research for that professor. I'm getting to do like my own, which is really nice. Sometimes it's nice to just like have something like handed to you and be like, okay, do this. But that's the good and the bad, like having so much freedom in my research and how to do that, explore that. I can't say if it will like definitely have you know, like this like monumental effect on the industry as a whole, but I do hope to contribute to not only the academic part of it, but just in general, having the scientific like research backing and understanding for these things that are going on within the industry. You can't fix a problem until you can name it. And so I think it's important to, even if it's not like life-changing information, even if like the results I find are that, you know, the cannabis industry largely follows like the same racial hierarchies that we have like just in general society, it's important to be able to identify that, to know then where to go from there. No, I think legacy farmers definitely play a portion in it. I, like, for the purposes of my own research of trying not to be too broad, have been kind of more focused on the effects that legalization has had on these sort of relationships. But I definitely think that it is important to examine legacy farmers as well, because again, like I said, this culture that we've been talking about was literally established by these people's, parents, grandparents, et cetera, et cetera. And so it's like really there where we're gonna find like the keys to what people really understand about themselves within the industry, and then being able to compare that to like the actual lived experiences, I think is really important. So I definitely think like legacy farmers play a huge role in it as well. But like I said, for the sake of trying not to be too broad in my own research, I really had to like hone it down. And so I've been looking more closely at like legalization and the effects that has had. I mean, I guess I just want to like shout out like the lab and Dan himself, because like they provide me with like a lot of really cool opportunities to research, and not only to research but to present my research, like the symposium that's coming up. He allotted like 10 minutes for me to be able to like present what I'm doing, which is like really nerve-wracking, but also really, really like cool to think about that I'll be able to share my research in that way. Um, I'm really excited for that. Really excited for the trip to Mendo coming up, being able to do that, which you're coming with me, so I hope you're excited too. And I really like the lab in general. Like just being here is really fun. Like I really do enjoy like coming here. It's like always a good time, and just like everyone laughing and having fun. And I also get a lot of really good ideas from like people who are coming and going like as I'm sitting here doing my research. So that's really cool. So yeah, I mean, I think more people really like should utilize the lab and like should know about the lab in general. So, I really just want to emphasize like how just like wonderful like it is to like have something like this where that fosters like such community among young scholars, but in a way that's not like super like strict and academic, and it's just a lot more casual. But I think that it's important to have those casual spaces to like reignite and just remember why you're in this, like being a part of that community. So yeah, shout out to the CSL. I love it here.